but I might try that one again. There was one that I did with somebody that I said that I was horse face. That was super funny.
Horse face?
I was horse face. Instead of horsepower, I was horse face.
Uh-huh.
It was amazing.
All right, so
Oh my God, why? This is what happens when I get distracted by all the technology beforehand. My brain's
got a lot going on right now.
I don't know what you're talking about. Everything's fine.
Right. Juggle it all, no worries.
Maybe I'll just keep that part in.
And go.
You're like, and welcome to Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection. Here is Cindy Hartzell.
They'll be calling like, what is she doing?
They'll just be like, she's officially lost her nuts. Her marbles. They're gone. All right. Maybe we'll try this again. We'll have I should have like a blooper reel. It'll be really funny. Like you guys all do great. I'm just the one that's a little bit crazy. So.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure we'll. Okay.
Unbridled awareness and transformation through horses. Unbridled awareness and transformation through horses.
There you go. That just rolled.
All right. 15 minutes later. All right. Try this again. Hey everybody, I'm Elysia Bust, host of Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection, and today I have the great honor and privilege of getting to connect with Cindy Hartzell, living in. See, you know, we have these moments when we get to produce things, all that we get to have like a blooper reel. So I'm with the one, the only Cindy Hartzell, who is located in Genoa, Nevada, and she is a horsemanship coach, helping people with unbridled awareness and transformation with horses. Now, she has all sorts of interesting stories that she's going to share with us today. And she's also, this cracks me up so much, she's a trainer at Handsome Harry. Handsome Harry, and she's a Mustang Ambassador. And I just love that. So we'll definitely have to touch base about that a little bit. Cindy, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
You're very welcome. So before we talk about anything else, I really feel like we have to talk about this Handsome Harry situation.
Okay. All right. Handsome Harry is a 5-year-old Mustang that was removed from the Virginia range here in Nevada, which the Virginia range is the mountain range between Reno, Nevada, goes all the way out to Fallon, Fernley, Virginia City, and then over here to the Carson City area. So it's that big range. And he was removed from the range when he was 5 days old because by one of the local groups that help manage the wild Mustangs here. It was noticed when he was about 3 days old that he wasn't thriving. And so they watched him for a few days, and on day 5, his mom, he was getting weaker and weaker, and his mom was beginning to choose the herd over him. And when that starts to happen, we know that baby's going to be abandoned. That mom knows that something's wrong, and she's choosing her safety with the herd versus trying to stay with her foal. So they removed him, and when they had him in the truck, giving him a bottle because he was so weak and so hungry, the young volunteers that were petting him because he was on their lap kind of petted against the fur and saw this white sheet moving. He was infested with lice.
Oh.
And that's why he wasn't thriving. So they took him in, they bottle fed him, got him all cleaned up. And when he was 10 months old, they called me to get him halter started and help them find him a home. Well, when I got him, he's just such a funny little character. He's super athletic. He's super charismatic. He's playful. He's smart. And we were starting a nonprofit, and I went to my board and I said, I think this is the perfect ambassador. They had named him Dirty Harry. And that just was not going to do. So I named him Handsome Harry. And he did his first public event when he was 12 months old, and he's done the Virginia City Parade. He's gone all over. We've done events with the Carson City Sheriff's Department. And we go around to the public, educating them about Mustangs and horses. So not just, but it's so much fun to go to public, like craft fairs, and we're a regular at the Dayton, Nevada days. We have people returning year after year to come see Handsome Harry, and he's in a 10x10 pen. And it's so much fun to see young and old love on him, because they've never actually petted a horse or seen a wild Mustang. And he's not wild anymore, but he's still a Mustang. So that's Handsome
Right.
Harry.
No, that's fantastic.
He's a goober.
How old is he now?
He's 5. He's 5.
Wow.
Yeah, we just had a big scare at Christmas time. I looked out my window into his pasture, and he was neurological, staggering all over the place. I think he's a goober. He runs around like a wild child. I think he wiped his feet out from underneath him, which I see him do a lot, and banged his head and created neurological stuff. I think I caught him right after it happened and got him to the vet. We got him on IV medications, and within 48 hours he was back to normal. So we were very, very lucky.
I'm glad he's okay.
Yeah, me too. He's a fun guy.
Yeah. How many horses do you have at your place?
We have 14 here. All of them but 4 are Mustangs. And
Awesome.
We have a few that are still pretty wild, and then most of them are in various stages of being gentled.
What advice would you give to somebody who's wanting to get into adopting Mustangs or working with them in any way?
I would, if you've never had horses before, I would definitely align yourself with somebody who understands Mustangs. So many people say Mustangs are just like horses, and they're not. And the way that they're not is their instincts are so much stronger than a domestic horse. A domestic horse is born into domestic environment, and most often are removed from their dams when they're 6 months old. And so they don't get a lot of that education that you can only get from an older horse. Right. So Mustangs have a much stronger instinct. And so you need to understand that about them. The other thing is, so many people think you just get a Mustang and train them. And to take that approach, you will have holes, what I call holes in the foundation of the horse, because a Mustang has to trust you. So you will hear me say, I gentle Mustangs before I train them. The gentling part is gaining that trust, is proving to them that I'm a worthy leader of them trusting. And once you get that trust from a Mustang, you will always have it unless you abuse it. So I would recommend that people do their research. If you don't understand the concept, if you don't understand Mustangs, find somebody that does, that understands you have to gentle and gain the trust before you train them. Be patient. Horses, all being in the present moment and being patient. And the best thing that you can do for your horse, your Mustang, and you is to be patient. Other than that, I've had horses all my life and started working with Mustangs in 2011. And I will probably, and I mean, I won't say never, but I will probably always choose Mustangs from this point forward, because they're amazing.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's always good to differentiate, between the two, and like why it's so important to really be patient and authentic, right? Yes. Horses are really great bullshit readers, and Mustangs are even better.
Absolutely.
And can be like dangerous too, yes, if you take that for granted.
Yes. And you see those Mustangs that end up at the auction, most likely going to slaughter, or with the BLM, the Mustangs that have had 3 strikes. 90% of the time, those strikes should have been on the human and not on the Mustang's end.
For people who don't understand the 3 strikes, 3-strike system for the Mustangs. Can you explain that to the public?
The 3-strike system is a Mustang from the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, can be adopted out 3 times. And if they're returned, not because the owner wasn't taking good care of them, but because the owner returned them, they only get returned 3 times before they will never be available for adoption again, which means either they will live their life out at the facility, and or who else knows what, you know.
Right.
I mean, they're not supposed to ship them off to auction, but who knows? There's rumors there are. I have no proof either way.
Yeah, no,
That's
I
just,
completely
if
understand.
they come back 3 times, they're done. They won't ever leave the facility again.
And how many Mustangs are at facilities in the United States? Do you know?
You know, the last time I checked, there was like, the last time I looked at numbers, which was a few years ago, there were 30,000 wild and over 50,000 in captivity. And I'm sure that there's more in captivity now and less in the wild, because every year they're rounding up. Within all the states that have Mustangs, I would say they're probably rounding up anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000.
And how often do the roundups occur?
Huh?
Is that just yearly roundups, or is that?
Well, I don't know if they're yearly roundups. I don't know that every state rounds up yearly. It's just when they reach an what they consider overpopulated number within their state, then they go round up.
Gotcha.
You know, and they're doing the PZP, which is helping the mare sterilization program, fertility program, not sterilization, and that's making a difference. Our Virginia range, and the advocates here are on one of the big, I think it's the biggest pilot program here in the United States with the PZP, and they're doing a good job. They've documented in the Virginia range, they actually have volunteers documenting those horses, and every single horse out there, every single Mustang in our Virginia range is documented and watched. So they're doing a really good job.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And what got you into horses to begin with?
Oh, geez, I've had them all my life. I'm pretty sure I was born with them in my veins. I think I saw my first horse when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I was just like, oh my, you know, I wanted to get near it. Of course, I didn't get to. But I've wanted them all of my life. My parents had the foresight to get me one when I was 11, and I've had them ever since. Horses have saved my life many, many times. I was raised in a pretty dysfunctional, abusive, not home directly, but, well, yeah, I know there was abuse in the home, but they were my lifeline. You know, I'm an empath. I do animal communication as a part of one of the things I do. And so being an empath and having parents who were not congruent or authentic, I would hear what they were saying verbally, but I could hear what they were thinking, and it didn't match, which created confusion. My parental influence parented through fear and bullying and animals. We had cats growing up, and then I got my horses when I was 11, and the animals are what made me feel safe. The animals taught me about unconditional love. And so yeah, from 11 on, I know that having a pregnant teen mom or a teenage mom or dead by drugs or a runaway or all of the above. So they've saved my life over and over again, even as an adult. You know, I was married in not such a good marriage, and they have been my lifeline. I have 2 kids, and when my kids were teenagers, I was watching, and I parented my children totally opposite of the way that I was parenting. They had a voice, they knew they mattered, they were encouraged to be all they could be. But I was watching their friends go through similar things that I went through as a child. And I remember sitting out one night with my horse sitting over my shoulder, thinking, how can I help these kids with my horses in the way that my horses have helped me? And I set out looking in to do that. I didn't want to be doing horseback riding lessons. That wasn't appealing to me. So I found an organization called EGALA, which is Equine Assisted Growth and a Learning Association. And in 2004, I got certified in that and worked with a psychotherapist for many years, working with many different populations, youth, women, couples, things like that. But I didn't like having to stay. I wasn't a psychotherapist. In that model, you have to have an equine specialist and a psychotherapist. And I knew that I had so much more to offer. And so I set out looking for something different and found equine experiential education, which was more of that experiential part of it.
Right.
And then I also studied strategic intervention with Tony Robbins, and transitioned into the realm of coaching with my horses. And in 2011, I had my first introduction to working with Mustangs, and that was life-changing.
Nice.
That was amazing. I was working with a horseman who was a mentor of mine, with 10 wild Mustangs, all over the age of 13. And we were there to halter start them so they could get shots and things. And we were there for about 6 months, and then that ended. And in 2012, I was introduced to a nonprofit here that works with the Virginia range horses that had rescued 130 that were removed from the range by the state. They were state-owned Mustangs versus federally owned. Well, state-owned Mustangs, they consider them a stray, meaning somebody must have owned them. So they run an ad for 5 days. If nobody claims them, then they can do what they want. So they sent 130 to auction. Wow. And this little tiny nonprofit, along with the help of American Wild Horse Campaign, which is the biggest Mustang organization in the United States, they rescued all of them, and they took them out to 650 acres, and none of these people really knew what to do with Mustangs. So I found them and got to be the herd manager for a year and a half. Awesome. Of 130, and that's what changed my life. That's what set me on the path that I am now, because that herd of Mustangs going from the wild, there was 130, but they were in 7 bands, 7 families. And I would go out there when nobody knew I was coming, and I would just sit on the mountain and watch them. And they taught me, they showed me how much the Mustangs could teach humanity. There was social dynamics being sorted out. Because, 137 herds, we're talking hundreds of acres in the wild, that, yeah, they would come together from time to time, but they don't have to coexist in a fenced-in area. And the males had all been neutered, castrated, the wintertime. So there's social dynamics going on. There's family dynamics going on. There's relationship dynamics going on. There was self-development, as these, what would be fillies coming into breeding age, and stallions that are now geldings, maturing to breeding. Well, they still had that instinct, but they didn't have the parts. watching that be sorted out. Then there's the boundaries and the communication, and then there was the leadership and the fellowship that I watched playing out before my eyes. And it was the most amazing time in my life, because it really solidified how amazing horses are as our teachers, and how resilient they were. So in 2014, when I left that organization, I took 5 Mustangs with me, who I still have. And one of the little 2-year-old gelding, well, stallions that was removed, he ended up being a crypt orchid. And before we realized that, he had bred 20 of the mares out there.
And for people who don't know what a crypt orchid is, do you want to explain that to them? I know what it is, but
that is a retained testicle. So when they castrated him, for whatever reason, he had a retained testicle. They probably didn't care, because they, in their minds, they were going to auction. So when he got out there, he still had testosterone flowing. All of the other geldings, which I called them steldings, because they were still the stallions of their bands, they just couldn't breed. And that was a sad thing to watch, both for the stallions or the steldings and their mares. It was as hard for the mares, saying, hey, you're supposed to breed me. We're supposed to, now's the time, buddy. Well, this little guy had testosterone, and often when you have a horse that's crypt orchid, like if they're supposed to be breeding stock, often when you allow them to breed once or twice, they will drop that testicle. So he bred 20 times. One of the mares that I brought home happened to be one of them. So I have mother, father, and son, which I wasn't planning on. But that was a pivotal point in my life. And since then, I've been on the journey of, okay, I've studied horsemanship for 20 years now. I started my journey in 2000. And I have coaching abilities. I have life experience that has given me wisdom. So I'm not just preaching something I've not practiced nor experienced. And I set out to figure out how I can take what I do and bridge the gap between horses and their humans. And that's what I've done. I've studied with my horsemanship mentor for 7 years. He and I parted ways in 2018, which was a painful experience. I was assisting him in horsemanship clinics and things like that, but it was there was a silver lining. It made me step up and step out and own my authentic self and my unique gifts. And so now what I'm really focusing on is, like I said, bridging that gap between horses and their humans to help them have a better relationship. And in that approach that I'm taking, I consider it a holistic approach, meaning that we are a whole being. And I look at it as a circle or a ball. And within that is the emotion. There's the physical part of us. There's the mental part of us, the emotional part of us, and that spiritual part of us. And to be whole, they all have to be balanced. At one time physical's more, and at another time the mental's working more, but all in all, we have to be balanced. Yeah. And what I've discovered through working with the Mustangs and through my own horsemanship journey with my horses and teaching others is horses possess the same 4 quadrants to make them whole. And what's interesting about it is we are born with all of these components. And in order for us to be balanced, it has to be nurtured. Like our physical body has to be nurtured. We have to feed it right. We have to strengthen it and let it rest. You know, we have to nurture that. And our mental body, it has to be nurtured. We learn, we start going to school at a young age and we're taught. Our emotions, we're born with our emotions just like we're born with that spiritual part of us. But neither one of those are nurtured. Our emotional being is nurtured until we're about 5 years old. You know, we're allowed to have a temper tantrum. We're allowed to cry when we need something. We're allowed to just recklessly laugh and be excited, you know, but then we get to that point where we're taught to start controlling our emotions. And our emotions are our guidance our system. It tells us when we're balanced and when we're not. We're meant, like animals, we're meant to experience joy. And when we're experiencing frustration or anxiety or anger or fear, it's our emotional body telling us you're out of balance. You've lost your balance. The spiritual part is never really talked about. And when I talk about spiritual intelligence, I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about a deity or a being or something that we worship. Spiritually, a spiritual intelligence, and I'm going to read this to you because I don't have it memorized, but it is just such a great definition. Spiritual intelligence is the ability to behave with wisdom and compassion while maintaining inner and outer peace, regardless of the situation. That's spiritual intelligence. Society does not teach our young about emotional or spiritual intelligence. And you can see it. Our emotions are either way out of control or completely shut down. And I think in the corporate world, I think a big part of the problem, and in the world, I'm not going to go into sections of the world, but I think if we paid more attention to spiritual intelligence and emotional intelligence, or as much attention to that as we do physical intelligence and mental intelligence, we would not have the dysfunction in the world that we have. So how does that play into me and my little corner of the world and what I'm doing? I have discovered the ability to identify those 4 quadrants in the horses, thanks to that 1.5 years with the Mustangs and then really building on that. And I'm getting better at identifying them in the person as well. And there's this saying that horses are mirrors to humans. There are mirrors. They show us what we might not be seeing within ourselves. And that's not a new concept. I just posted on my Facebook page today. I post inspirational posts, and the one that I posted today was from Ray Hunt, talking about horses are mirrors to humans. And he can tell everything about a person by observing their horse. So that's not a new concept. But I found that by bringing up awareness to people about those 4 quadrants and how to nurture them, because mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, we are born with that. That's nature's gift. Now, as part of our journey, it's up to us to nurture it. And through nurturing it is where we master it. And that's where inner and outer peace comes from. So by helping people that I work with to become aware, because you cannot change that which you're not aware of, right? So change begins with awareness.
Yes, for sure.
The trick is to be aware without God bless you.
Excuse me.
The trick is to be aware without being judging.
Yeah. That's
Because
a trick for sure.
Yeah. When you judge, you get in the way of your ability to honestly.
Excuse me.
God bless
The light that's shining in my face right now. Light makes me sneeze. I look at the sun.
There you
It's
go.
just this weird thing. Anyways, go on.
So when you're aware of what's going on in your own body, and sometimes my clients aren't ready, they have no idea, because I'm not there. I think most of us trainers that are really living through our authentic selves, we totally get that we're not training and changing the horse. The horse is perfect. By helping the human become aware of their inner incongruency, the horse will mirror that back. So yes, there are horses that have challenges and problems and bad behaviors, don't get me wrong. That's just because they were trained by somebody who didn't understand to nurture them physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. When I say spiritually with the horse and a human in engaging, I'm talking about that heart and soul connection. Spirituality, that spiritual part of us, is where our intuition resides. So when we can connect with a horse spiritually, we're connecting through them, to them, through intuition, which is they're masters at that language.
Right.
So by doing what I do and helping to bridge that gap and help people begin to be aware of what's going on in their horse, what part of the horse did they lose? For example, I was out on the trail with my new Mustang that is becoming my main partner, and she's green. It was her 6th trail ride, and it was a day. There were mountain bikes, there were hikers, there were horses, there was lots of stimulus. And the horse I was riding with, the gal that I was riding with, her horse, we were on a single track, which was this little Mustang's, well, she's not little at all. It was Dakota's first time to go up a single track trail. So, and one side's down and one side's mountain. Well, we met dogs and a person on that trail, so they pulled off. We rode by. Dakota and I are in the front. We got by. My girlfriend behind me got by. The dog started to move and for whatever reason spooked the horse behind, who ran up on Dakota. Well, Dakota hopped off the trail and stood there doing pee-offs. Like, ah! And so I worked to stay calm and bring her back to me. And for somebody who doesn't understand the 4 quadrants, they would have thought that horse physically lost it because she mentally spooked, right? Well, that's not it at all. There was emotions go blah, and so the mental part said run, and the physical was actually the last part of that quadrant to get out of balance. But for the average person, all they see is the physical part of it. That's what I mean by all 4, and that's in my program what I strive to help people learn, because if you can understand what part of the horse you lost, you can then go to that part within you, breathe into it, balance it, and get your horse to come find you intuitively.
That's leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super cool. So tell me more about like the online courses that you do to help people and be supported in that.
Awesome. I do online courses, which I'm getting ready to launch one right now, which is the Art of Communication. learning. It's going to be a 12-week course, and in that,
sorry, hold on, you froze for a second. Can you say it again? Learning to like the 4-week.
It is the online course I'm getting ready to launch right now is called The Art of Communication: Learning to Speak the Unspoken Language.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's going to be a 12-week course, and in that there's going to be lecture time where you're learning about horse psychology, horse behavior, communication, you know, the holistic wholeness approach. There's going to be activities that you're given to go out and do with your horse. So Dakota and I will demonstrate, you know, what we're looking for, and then you go out and do it. There's going to be some private one-on-one with me in that. I don't know if it's going to be 1 or 2 private coaching sessions with me. There will be a Facebook group. And so in that 12 weeks, we're going to just build on, you know, identifying and understanding about the horse as well as about yourself.
Yes.
Because I am a firm believer, because I was raised, you do what I say, not what I do. You do what you're told, you know, that kind of stuff, that I will not ask my horse to do something I am not willing to do myself. And so that's going to be part of what I teach. And then, you know, the next course that'll be offered will be Mastering the Art of Communication. I also have one I'm working on that I do here at my house, but with COVID, we haven't been able to. So now I'm figuring out how I'm going to take that online. And it is called Discovering the Goddess Warrior Within.
I love it.
Yeah. And it incorporates the horse. When I do it here, my Mustang, the first Mustang that I got, she's a Mustang mare named Dreamcatcher. And she usually helps me facilitate that, where all of the participants get to actually go in and do a session with her in the round pen at Liberty. And then when we do it here at my house, we actually do archery as well. Amazing. Yes. So
my bow is underneath my bed right now.
Oh, don't you love it? Mounted archery. Yeah. Oh. Dakota's not ready for that yet, but but in that one, you know, Dreamcatcher helps you get in touch with that goddess, which is that authentic being, you know, that spiritual being. And then the warrior part of us is actually, the way that I look at it, is the ego, you know, and the ego's job is to make sure we survive every day. But the ego is out of control in most of us and is often captain of the ship. And so in this workshop, we explore both in a healthy way.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it so much. What are some of your favorite stories of things that your clients have overcome and transformed into?
Oh, that's a tough one. I wasn't really prepared for that one. Well, you know, a lot of my clients I work with had some kind of traumatic experience. I also teach a clinic that is about overcoming trauma with your horse, and what makes me qualified for that. In 2017, my main partner, who has since then been retired, I was unhaltering him, and we thought he spooked. At the time, we thought he spooked, and he spun and hit me in the head with his head and knocked me unconscious. And I was had a triple brain bleed and was in neuro ICU for 3 days, and took me about 4 months to recover. And then in 2019, the same horse, I was tying him up to my trailer, had stuck his rope through the metal cleat, and my hand is small. And so I reached up to grab that rope, and he spooked and pulled back and amputated half of this finger and the tip of this one. So I know trauma. and I know what it feels like to want to quit. So some of the most amazing things that I've seen, to finish that story, everybody, I went through blaming me. You know, I screwed up. I was in the wrong place taking his halter off. I screwed. I mean, I grill it. I will never tie a horse to anything but a blocker tie again. But this horse I've had since he was 11 months old, and he's solid as a rock, has always been. And 2017, he started changing. By this year, he was a horse who would spook on the trail at his own shadow and at rocks. And if another horse on the trail acted up, RC was always that solid horse that all the other horses looked to. He would lose his, pardon my French, shit. Go bucking, rearing, taking off. Well, long story short, he's got a mental, they don't know if it's a brain lesion or a brainstem lesion or a brainstem tumor. So the moral to this story, you guys, is if your horse starts acting erratic in his behavior, it's not always behavioral. It was medical. But he set me out on the journey of helping others overcome PTSD with their horses. And I have had women who were absolutely terrified at the thought of getting on their horses. And by using my approach of coaching and breathing and awareness and understanding psychology and behavior, and that seeing them in a clinic 6 hours back on their horses with huge smiles on their faces. I have seen people whose horses are completely out of control transform to polite, respective followers because and they're mainly women. It's not just that I work with just women, but that's the population I tend to draw. By teaching them to find the self-confidence and to find that leader within, that goddess warrior within, to show up and be the leader that their horses need them to be. I have watched time and time again at my clinics, I watch these horse and women pair come in where they're holding them super tight and they're super scared and they're withdrawn and the horses are just like, whoa, to the end of the clinic where they're all connected and you can just feel the harmony within the pair. So those are amazing, but then I hear stories about how they look at their children differently. And their relationships with their husbands are now different. Or now they've gone to work. I've worked with women in leadership roles at work that I'm looking at them going, how do you get away with that? You're like totally faking it, hoping you're going to make it. And I've had them work with me and go to work and not only have so much joy in what they're doing, but they've got a team that's come together and each one of their team members are now flourishing because of what their horse has taught them.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, they're pretty magical. They're pretty amazing.
So much for us to get to think about. I just really love what you're doing out there. I hope I get to come visit someday.
I would love to have you come visit. I would love to. It would be fun.
It would be fun, for sure.
Yeah.
What are some of the differences that you've seen between Igala and E3A?
Igala is more psychotherapy approach. It's more the mental health component, where E3A is more the experiential learning component. So they both have the ability for self-development and self-empowerment. The E3A is is more of that experiential learning about yourself and how you show up in the world, how you problem solve, your archetypes, you know, which is what are your strong, is it the Braxton Hicks test that shows you how you show up in the world mentally and how you process. Are you more introverted? Are you more extroverted? You know, E3A works more on that self-exploration and leadership component. They work a lot with corporates and professionals. I mean, you do work with your family dynamics and things like that, where the EGALA, to me, EGALA is more towards that psychotherapy, mental health realm. So we, through our nonprofit, we did, in 2019, we did a program with the Wounded Warriors. My husband is also trained in E3A. Nice. And so we did a program with the Wounded Warriors and family members on how to bridge the gap between the family dynamics of the warrior returning and, you know, this mother had been in active duty since this 11-year-old was 7 months old.
Wow.
So she was gone for like 3 to 6 months at a time through that whole period. And now she was no longer in active duty. And it's like, how do you, it's like getting to know each other all over again.
Right. Yeah.
And so we,
Makes sense.
Yeah, so we did some E3A activities in helping that to bridge the gap and playing with the horse, and it was fun to watch them find a common ground.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what's really cool about it is when you work with teams or you work, you know, like in management or businesses or family dynamics, or even people who come together for a day to work in a group, doing the E3A work, the equine experiential stuff. It's nice to see everybody is kind of like out of their comfort zone, right? They're in an unfamiliar space. They're with this big or multiple big animals that have a presence that is commanding, you know, you just are in awe of them. And they're being asked to do things that they don't really know how to do. So we're calling in on all 4 of those: mental, physical, spiritual, to show up and try and figure out how to achieve what we're asking them to achieve with a horse. It's fun to watch. It lowers all their guards and all their defenses and all their identities and calls for them to show up authentically. And it's amazing to watch the transformations. You know, it's not always easy.
Oh, I know. No.
No,
but it's incredibly important. Yeah. What are some of the populations that you work with?
We have mainly worked with youth, you know, like boys groups or girls groups. We've worked with businesses, management teams. And like I said, we've worked with the Wounded Warriors. As we grow our nonprofit, because that's one of our things we do in our nonprofit is the E3A component. My husband is a veteran, and he's drawn to working with veterans. And I enjoy working with them because I really feel that we have done a disservice to our veterans. Like Mustangs and our veterans have given up everything. Well, our Mustangs in the sense of horses, you know. I mean, the Mustangs came from, the original ones came from the Spaniard explorers. That's a whole nother story. But the Mustangs' ancestors fought to help us make America what it is today. And they continue to fight in battles with us. And our veterans fight for our freedom. And then they're returned and they're just disposable. They're just put out to pasture. And they're given no resources and no support to integrate back into society. And so what we'd like to do with our programs is bring the Mustangs and the veterans together, as well as abused children and or kids in the foster system together with Mustangs, because they resonate with the story of the Mustang, forgotten, not supported, you know. So those are the, I think if I had to say which ones that, you know, are my favorite, I love working with women, but when it comes to the E3A work, I think those are probably my two favorite populations. I worked with this one, do I have time for a story?
Of course.
Okay. I worked in 2012, I spent the summer in Texas working with a bunch of endurance riders, teaching them about Reiki. I'm a Reiki master teacher, which is natural energy work, chi energy work. And I do aromatherapy. I love to do aromatherapy with horses, and I am an animal communicator. So I was working with these endurance riders, giving them some tools to help support their horses through their endurance races, because these guys were doing like 50, 100-mile endurance races, and there's only so much you can do legally with your horse. Like they can't pre-endurance because those oils can test as a drug. So, but the Reiki, they can help stabilize the heart rate. I mean, there's a lot they can do with the Reiki. So I was there for the summer teaching. And at the facility I was teaching, the woman's boyfriend was a retired Army, oh my God, what now? Why am I? An Army Ranger. I'm like, why am I forgetting? He's not a SEAL. He was an Army Ranger. And he was actually one of the Army Rangers that went in and found Bin
Laden?
Yes, Bin Laden. Can you tell how into politics I am? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Bin Laden. And so he had a lot of gnarly PTSD from that. I mean, he would wake up in terrors. He was not sleeping. He had all kinds of stuff, very guarded. And he was barbecuing for this 3-day workshop I was doing. So in the evening, we would all share meals together. And we, 4 of us, stayed up late. And the two were fighting over the fact that she wasn't sleeping because he was waking up in terrors and he was refusing to take the medication that they wanted him to take. So we were talking about it, and he and I kind of pulled off to the side, and he was talking to me about it. And you could tell he was very shut down. And I was like, well, you know, tell me what it is what goes on when you wake up in your terror? What are you doing? And he would, rather than talk about it, he would go into, you don't know what I've seen. I've seen my best friend's face blown off and da-da-da. And he would throw all these things at you that would make you want to just go, okay, and not want to talk about it, right? And I said, hey, you know what? Don't do that. Don't go there. I'm just asking you to kind of like, stay here with me in the present moment. And he couldn't do it. And I'm like, okay, do me a favor. Tell me, because what I started realizing in the conversation was, he was telling me in the training he went through. That's where this conversation started. He was telling me about the waterboarding. And I mean, everything he was like, he's like, did you ever watch Jason Bourne's movie? What's it called?
Born Identity.
Born Identity. God, my mind. Born Identity. I'm like, I love that show. He's like, that shit's real. That is real. That's what I went through. And then I went, whoa, they deprogram these human beings and they turn them into programmed killing machines, which means they shut them down emotionally and spiritually. Then they bring them back into the world. And the other thing he told me that blew me away was he is now on the list as a threat to the United States of America. I also have a Navy SEAL who told me the same thing. Because they teach them to be killing machines, when they are no longer working for the military, they are now considered national threats. He cannot get on a plane without like making phone calls. They bring him back and they say, bye-bye, thank you. Oh, you're having problems sleeping? Here, take all these drugs that screw your cognitive abilities up. So I was going, whoa, okay, this is messed up. I'm like, do me a favor. Can you tell me the first time you saw a horse? And he's like, yeah. I remember, I grew up with horses. I remember the first time I ever hiked my horse, my leg over an unbroken horse, meaning I don't like to call them broken, unstarted horse. And it was the most amazing experience I've ever had. And I could see his face soften. And I'm like, tell me about it. And he's like, well, you know, it was this. And he starts going into details. And I'm like, no, like, really tell me about it. What was the weather like that day? What was it? Was it cold breeze across your face? Because we're in Texas in the middle of summer, right? I'm dying of humidity. I'm like, was it a cool breeze or was it like this hot breeze? What was it like? Was the horse, can you remember him breathing? You know, I mean, whoa. And he went full on into describing this experience he had. And I watched this man soften. And I watched all of that armor melt. And when he was done, he actually had tears coming down his face. And he looked at me, and I'm not going to say his name, but I said, as I looked in his eyes with all my heart, and I said, that's who you really are. That's who you need to find. I was there for 5 more days, and he slept and called me 6 months later and said, you changed my life. Mm. Now, there was no physical horse there at that moment, but that's the power of the horse. I also we did a demonstration actually for a gala, and it was at the fairgrounds in Truckee, and we had 1 horse there, and we had volunteers come down. And we had 2 military volunteers come down, and they were young. They were late 20s, and they had both been in Iraq. And they did their thing, and we did our demo, and off they went. And then I got a letter from his mom, who worked with the psychotherapist that was my partner. And she said, I have to tell you how you changed my son's life. He would not speak of his experience overseas until the morning after that day. And he sat down and said, Mom, I'm ready to talk about it. I didn't do anything. I mean, we didn't even really specifically focus on him, just being there with the horse. Yeah. So that's the magic. That's the magic. All I am is the facilitator. You know, I'm just showing up, trying to be as authentic as I possibly can, doing my own work, you know, to be spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally balanced, the best that I can be for any horse that I step into the pen with, and to be in service to them and their people, and to people who want to find inner and outer peace through the way of the horse. That's who I am.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Is there any advice that you would give someone who's wanting to come into this field for equine assisted learning or mental health or coaching or therapeutic riding as an instructor, facilitator?
You know, I would encourage you to do it. It's rewarding. It's still a industry, or it's still a field that is fairly new. You know, I think Egala, it was the first one out there, and I think they came into business in 96 to 98. So it's still fairly new. But I would encourage you, if you're wanting to make a difference in the world with horses, this is a way to do it. It's honoring the horses. Decide if you want to work in the psychotherapy, the mental health realm, or if you like the coaching and the experiential learning part of it. So first get clear on that, and get clear, why are you doing it? You know, so many people come into this field because we have our own baggage, have helped us, even though we didn't set out for that to be that way. They have helped us. So know why you're getting into it, and also know that when you get into it, it doesn't mean you stop your own work. Because you can only give that which you have. And if you don't work on your own inner growth and inner healing, you're going to hit a wall. And not only will you not be doing the best of service for the people that you choose to work with, your horses are going to call bullshit. And they won't work with you in the way that they could. So I encourage you to do it, but know why you're doing it. Identify which way you want to do it, and then set out. There's equine experiential education. I love them. They were fairly new back in 2014 when my husband and I got certified, but they are really growing. They are now international, which is awesome. If you want to go into the coaching realm with horses, there are coaching certification programs out there that you can know your horses, you know, decide what you're going to do. Most of those modalities don't have riding involved. It's all on the ground, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, that's awesome. Awesome for the horse, for sure. Or, you know, like I've gone, I want to make the world for horses that are being ridden a better place. I want people to understand they're not a tool, and it's not a dictatorship, you know? So that would be my advice, is to get clear on what you're doing and why you want to do it and what you want to do, and then set up. But don't not do it, because we need lots of us out there.
Yes, we do need lots of us. And I feel like, you know, if anything, we actually need to lean in more with our interpersonal growth than less, because of how we're serving people and connecting with horses.
One of my mantras is to be the change I want to see in the world.
I love it.
So
yeah, that's a good one.
I'm walking the talk. And it's
That's
not always
the best
graceful.
way to be. No, it's not always graceful. It's not pretty. But it is important and helpful. So my friend, with our last question for the day, who in the world or what inspires you?
Well, first and foremost, horses, mainly Mustangs, but all horses are huge inspirations. Ray Hunt and Bill Durant's huge. Yes. Wayne Dyer is huge. And I think, you know, the more that I do this work, my clients are my inspiration. You know, the ones that are willing to show up, realize that it's more about them than it's to hang in there for the horse.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And
Thank you.
I love how you're serving your community and how you continue to grow and push in your own way, and how you help the Mustangs and all horses. Very much needed. You're very welcome.
Thank you, thank you. It's a journey, and I'm honored to have had you reach out to me and to meet you and
Likewise.
to walk forward with you. I look forward to getting together with you someday.
Likewise. Many thanks, my friends.
Yes.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, as always. And until next time, bye.
Bye. Thank you.